So I am titling our whole talk today, Under God. That's not a typo. I didn't mistakenly put under God instead of underdog, because David, folks, is not an underdog. And if we stand under God, we're not underdogs either. We know how this story ends. We know who wins. We are capable of literally limitless potential if we stand under God and let Him work His will through us. And that's what happened with David. So we're going to read through this story together, and I know it's a long one, but it is too good to cut short, and it's frankly too good to even do in pieces, so I'm going to read through the whole thing together. I need you to try to do one thing and one thing alone for me. When you listen or you read through with me, pretend you've never heard this before. Pretend you've never seen an image of David and Goliath before. Pretend you've never heard this. Look at this story with fresh eyes with me this morning. We're going to be in 1 Samuel 17, 1 through 51. Now, the Philistines gathered their armies for battle. They were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Socoh and Azekah, and Ephes Dammim. Saul and the Israelites gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and formed ranks against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had greaves of bronze on his legs and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And his shield bearer went before him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves. Let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "Today I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah named Jesse, who had 8 sons. In the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 eldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 eldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward and took his stand morning and evening. Jesse said to his son David, "Take for your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers. And take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See how your brothers fare, and bring some token from them." Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, took the provisions, and went as Jesse had commanded him. He came to the encampment as the army was going forth to the battle line, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage, ran to the ranks, and went and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. All the Israelites, when they saw the man, fled from him, were very much afraid. The Israelites said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he's come up to defy Israel. The king will greatly enrich the man who kills him, and will give him his daughter, and make his family tree in Israel." David said to the men who stood by him, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The people answered him in the same way, "So shall it be done for the man who kills him." His eldest brother, Eliab, heard him talking to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. He said, "Why have you come down? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you've come down just to see the battle." David said, "What have I done now? It was only a question." He turned away from him toward another and spoke in the same way, and the people answered him as before. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul said to David, "You're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you're just a boy, and he's been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and whenever a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and struck it down, rescuing the lamb from its mouth. And if it turned against me, I'd catch it by the jaw, strike it down, and kill it. Your servant has killed both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, since he's defied the armies of the living God." David said, "The Lord who saved me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will save me from the hand of this Philistine." So Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Saul clothed David with his armor, put a bronze helmet on his head, and clothed him with a coat of mail. David strapped Saul's sword over the armor, and he tried in vain to walk, for he was not used to them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I'm not used to them." So David removed them. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the wadi and put them into his shepherd's bag in the pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. The Philistine came on and drew near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. The Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the field." But David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the Philistine army this very day to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." When the Philistine drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, striking down the Philistine and killing him. There was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine. He grasped his sword, drew it out of its sheath, and killed him. Then he cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. This is the story, as it's written in here. This is the story of David versus Goliath. And as we prepare to think about the battle, I want you to remember how this whole thing starts, right? You've got 2 armies facing each other on opposing mountains with a valley between them. You can just feel the tension in here, right? Army versus army, thousands encamped against thousands. But who needs an army when you have God? And that's what David understood. He understood that with this challenge from Goliath came an incredible opportunity. And when you have God on your side, you don't need thousands. You just need one who is capable of listening and doing as God has called them to do. And that's what David showed us. And one of the reasons David was able to do this was because he didn't have any fear. You'll notice that for 40 days, Goliath taunts them and challenges them, and nothing happens because of fear. Thousands of men held in check by fear. It's a great reminder for us. Do not let fear keep you from God's battle. God's battle, God's call on you, God's challenge. Don't let fear stop you. That's what held an army. David ran into battle because he was fearless. Now this 40 days might sound familiar. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the Bible that's 40 days. It's symbolic of something. I want you to remember what those 40-day periods were. So if you'll remember, in the time of Noah, there were 40 days of rain on the earth. And in Oregon, that's not a big deal. But at the time, right, big deal, Noah gets in the boat, all right? Then you've got Moses. He's on a mountain with God, okay? Incredible conversation, stirring of a powerful relationship. The 10 Commandments come out of this 40 days between Moses on a mountain with God, and then Jesus' temptation by Satan was 40 days. So when you guys see 40 days in the Bible, you have to know it means one of two things: judgment or trial or hardship. And what's happening during this 40 days is God's army, the Israelite army, is on trial. And God's saying, what are you going to do with this? And there's only one who answers that trial, responds to that call, and that's David. And he does it against this big guy, this Goliath. This name has become synonymous with giant for us. And before I put up an image, because you guys have probably seen images of Goliath, I want you to look at the stats on this guy, all right? We get in cubits. I'm not really well-versed in cubits. Maybe you guys are. Let's put it into our system of measurement. We believe that Goliath is between 6.5 and 9.5 feet tall. There's a dispute over the number of cubits. But you know what? It doesn't really concern me because I don't care if the guy's 6.5 feet tall. That means he's taller than me and I think everyone in this church, right? The guy's huge. And if he's 9.5 feet tall, I don't want to think about it. He's enormous. And he's wearing this coat of mail that if you put into our unit, that's 125 pounds that he's wearing. Some of you guys are probably 125 pounds or less. He's wearing that. That's how large this man is. He's carrying this spear. And we're told that the spear is huge, and then the head of the spear alone is 15 pounds. That's just the head of it. And he's got his own shield bearer. I picture this like little minion that's like running out ahead of him holding his shield. I don't know about you guys, but I would love to go into like a grocery store and have like a shield bearer, like dun da da da, right? Like announcing my coming into the place. That's who Goliath was. He's got his own little minion that's carrying his shield for him as he goes to the battle. And last but not least, his name. The name Goliath, many believe, means conspicuous. Conspicuous, meaning would stand out in a crowd. That's Goliath. And from all that, we've developed images like this one. Giant man, coat of mail, helmet on, spear in hand, tiny little minion shield bearer over here. And then, of course, we get David, who's drawn as very, very small by comparison. So here's Goliath. The problem is, this is how David is often portrayed. The youngest, right? He's an errand boy. He's bringing like bread and cheese. Okay? And he's a shepherd. And unfortunately, we assume that that means he's weak. I mean, look at this picture. He's just sitting there with cloth, like playing a harp for sheep in the forest. Like, really? David? I like this one. So if you read this closely, when he talks to Saul, David says, I kill lions and bears with my bare hands. This is the youngest. This is David. How many of you guys have ever grabbed a bear lion by the jaw and killed it? Nope, right? Me either. That's David. This is our youngest. David is not an underdog, folks. He's incredibly capable, incredibly strong. And let's not forget what draws him into this. It's this taunting, right? Goliath comes every single day and he taunts the entire army 40 days, which should remind us when we get there, when Jesus is tempted by Satan for 40 days, taunted 40 days of saying, no, I'm going to take you away from God. No, I'm going to take you down. And Satan, by the way, he's still doing this. He's still taunting you, and he's taunting me. And so how do you respond to that? Well, we do like David did. You have confidence in the Lord. This is why David was able to run into this battle, because he had confidence in what the Lord would do through him in this battle. This is the hand-down best response to the taunting of the evil one. Jesus, by the way, did this. When he was tempted by Satan, he responded with the words of God every time. He didn't have confidence in and of himself, which is crazy to think because it's Jesus. He has confidence in the Lord, in his word, and this is how we are called even today to respond to the tempting and the taunting of the devil. Confidence in the Lord. But even though he's confident, notice we got a couple people here who are not necessarily cheering on David, right? Look out for the Eliabs, the big brother, right? Those people who think they know, right? The big brother actually gets angry at him and says, I know why you're here. And he presumes, and he actually tells him, you're just here to watch the battle. And you guys know these people. These are the ones that come to you and presume they know you or your intentions, and they judge you. And I absolutely love David's response. What have I done now? I just asked a question. This is a great response to people when they come to you falsely and challenge you and judge you. You say, well, wait, what did I do again? What did I say? What do you think I am? And it causes them to reconsider the position that they have. But it's not just big brother. We got Saul, right? We have to look out for doubters in all shapes and forms. Look at Saul. Saul looked at David and said, you are not able. Not, I don't think this will go well. Literally says, you cannot do it. The problem with the doubters, whether it's big brother Eliab or Saul, is they forget this isn't about David's ability. This is that God is able. They missed that. David understood that. He never came in and said, I'm able. He said, God is able to do this through me. This is the confidence that we should have, that even when we face doubt, that we should say, look, this isn't about me. This isn't about my ability. This is about God's ability to do through me, through you, through this church, because of what God can do, not because of what we can do. And this is what makes us lamb rescuers. And when we think about lamb rescuers, I know what you, I tend to think about like someone like David, right, playing the harp, and one of those sweet little sheep like runs 10 feet off, and he like gallivants off and grabs, oh, sheep. That's not a lamb rescuer. This is a lamb rescuer. The lamb is dragged off by lion, bear, whatever. David chases them down, kills the enemy, and rescues the lamb. Christians, this is us. We're lamb rescuers. Sometimes in our witness, in our call to pull people into the faith, we're going to have to go to battle for someone. And I hope that the story of David reminds you and encourages you that you can do it if you stand under God and let him do it through you. And you can be victorious in that battle and still draw that sheep into the Lord. And I want you to notice something about how he does it, okay? He doesn't need the world's armor, and neither do you or I. I love this picture. Someone painted what it might have looked like when he put on all that body armor and the helmet. And you notice Saul even gives him his sword, right? And you see here, it's almost like Saul's looking at him, kind of rubbing his beard like, oh man, this is just silly. This is never going to work. And David, of course, says, yeah, you're right. Not going to work. I'm not comfortable in this. And fortunately, David takes it off because he recognizes he doesn't need the armor of the world. And you know what? Neither do we. The way the world thinks of battle and fighting and going into positions and having confidence in yourself and independence, that's not us. We don't need the world's armor. We have something greater on our side, and David recognized that. This is probably more like what David looked like going into battle, maybe without the flip of the hair. That makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Other than that, I love it. He's got the shepherd's staff, right? He's got the bag. He's got the sling. And he's got those 5 stones, and he's heading into battle against Goliath. But the thing that you don't see up here in that picture is the other thing that David says he's armed with. He's armed with the name of God. Verse 45, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. When you guys see Lord of hosts, or when you say that, or if you've ever sung that, you're not talking about God, the Lord of the people who seats you at a restaurant. Okay? The Lord of hosts are armies. You can literally translate that word armies. I come to you in the name of the Lord of armies. I come to you in the name of the Lord who's in charge of your Philistine army, my army, and every army in the world. That's ready for battle. And that's what David is armed with. And that's why he was so confident. I mean, look at the things that David says. I mean, you can't miss his confidence. Verse 46 says, I will strike you down, big guy. Right? After Goliath's challenge, he says, actually, no, you're the one who's going down. Why? Keep reading verse 46. So that all the earth may know that there's a God in Israel. Not so that all the earth may know that about me. So all the earth may know there's a God in Israel. And then he restates at the very next verse, the battle is the Lord's. This isn't about you, and it's not about me. This is about God, and he is going to win this one. But you can't miss the direction of his confidence. His confidence is not in himself. His confidence is in God. And this is not self-confidence, it's God confidence. And for me, generally, I felt the pressures of the world and even sometimes the encouragement of the world. Be confident in yourself until that doesn't work. Until I have confidence and I blow it. And then you find yourself scrambling and looking, where should my confidence be? It should be in God and what he could do through us. And David gets that even at a young age. And he's confident in what God is going to do. And he's so confident, he runs into this battle. He runs quickly into battle. I think about it this way. David was a shepherd. He wasn't sheepish. When we hear sheep, we tend to think weak and everything affiliated with them. But shepherds are not weak. Being a shepherd was an incredibly arduous task. It took literally 24/7 care. It was high risk. It was incredibly tiring. That's David. He's a shepherd. He wasn't sheepish. He wasn't scared in any way, shape, and form. He ran right at a giant. And then he got to do this. After the battle, he gets to take the sword of the giant and end him completely, once and for all. And I want you guys to miss the sword and where he got it from. David didn't have a sword on him. He used the sword of Goliath to kill Goliath. And I'm not going to belabor this point because Roger did a great job last week covering this with you guys in vengeance. But this is the thing, the only thing that we get to pray when it comes to enemies. And the Psalms especially are full of this type of prayer. God, may our enemies suffer by their own hand, not me. Vengeance isn't part of the game plan. We're called to love on them and pray for them, and at the most say, God, if they need to suffer, may they suffer on their own accord, not from me. And so it's not a coincidence that David gets to use the enemy's own sword to finish him off. And then notice how everyone responds, right? After this happens, we know that the Philistine army, they flee, and after them, if you keep reading, you know the army of Israel chases them down and finishes them off, because victory inspires. It really does. And this should speak to us now, you guys. Your victory over Satan will inspire other people to battle Satan. Your struggle, your challenge, whether you're in it now or you've been in it before, and if you face Satan down with an area of sin, either in your personal life, maybe in a relationship, if you've overcome that battle, please share it. That will inspire people around you. I know some of your stories. I actually got to hear a bunch, which was awesome between services. But I'm serious about this. If I don't know your story, your victorious battle against Satan, please tell me so we can share this with each other. Please tell each other. This is what keeps us going, right? As soon as they watched this happen, all of a sudden, after 40 days, the armies of God were ready to chase them down. Because our victories over Satan inspire other people. So remember to share those. I want to share a few points now that I can't take any credit for. How many of you have read this book, David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell? I'm the only one. Okay. I'm a bit of a Malcolm Gladwell nerd. He wrote an incredible book looking at this story. In a lot of ways, we misunderstand this story. And there's a couple of points he brought up I want to share with you guys that I think we miss sometimes. First thing that he points out in the book is that we need to know our strength. You need to know your strength. His whole point here is that what we do is we underestimate David and we overestimate Goliath. You underestimate yourselves and you overestimate the enemy. We've got to stop doing that. Know your strength. David knew his. It involved the sling and the stone. What's yours? What is the strength that God has given peculiar to you that he can use in the battle against the enemy? And Malcolm Gladwell recognizes that David doesn't just have a sling. He's got a sling and God. It's not just the stuff he's putting on, he's wearing. He actually has God on his side. And when you consider it from that perspective, it becomes pretty clear who's going to win this one. And this sling and stone, by the way, we tend to underestimate that too. I've never played with a sling and stone, and from the video you're going to see there's probably a good reason for it. Okay? So experts believe that a stone slung out of a sling, I think that's the right way to say that, would go approximately 45 meters per second. They also estimate that the stones in that area were about twice the density of a normal stone that we might be used to. And so ballistics experts believe that this stone leaving this sling would have the ballistic power of a 45 caliber bullet. That's David's weapon. Now, those are words. Take a look at this video so you can see what this might have been like. Would not want to stand in front of that. We really underestimate David's power and that weapon and that tool that he has. And the other thing we do is we overestimate Goliath. So we've looked at the David side. Now let's look at the Goliath side. We get a couple of clues in here that Goliath might have an issue or two. And one of it is a single word in what he says to David. He says, that you come to me with sticks. Sticks, plural. You've seen the pictures, you've read the story. There's no sticks. David has only one stick, and it's his shepherd's staff. Many believe that Goliath had a condition called acromegaly. And what acromegaly is it's a benign tumor in the pituitary gland that could have caused him to be so large. And one of the unfortunate effects of this condition is it can cause double vision. It's highly likely that Goliath had issues seeing, which is probably why he had a shield bearer to lead him to the valley floor. So no longer do I want a shield bearer, right, leading me through the grocery store. Goliath had issues, folks. What's the takeaway for us? The powerful are not what they seem. Everybody has a weakness. I don't know who your Goliath is. I don't know what the issue is, but it's got a weakness too. Many of us think of this as the Achilles heel. Goliath had an issue. We have to acknowledge that they're there, our Goliaths, the things that face us, as challenge us, recognize their weaknesses, and then innovate accordingly. David said, okay, if that's your issue, I'm going to challenge you in this way, and he had complete confidence that he was going to win. But part of the reason he knew that is because he knew his enemy's weakness. The other thing that Malcolm reminds us, and I love this point, is that when we look at obstacles, things in front of us, challenges, see them as opportunities. So not something that's like a giant wall that I can't get through or around, but see it like a speed bump or a hurdle, something that we have to clear. And those obstacles are actually opportunities for two things. One, our greatest learning, and two, our most memorable successes. And if you think about your life, you're probably going to find you agree with this. The things that you struggled with the most that you overcame, you probably learned the most from it, and you remember it because it was such a great challenge, such a great obstacle or opportunity. We need to change the way we see challenges and trials. We need to run at them under God, right? Armed with Him, knowing that God's going to win this one through me, and see those obstacles, in fact, as opportunities. So before we close, I want to take another look at David versus Goliath, but I want to do it this time looking at the characteristics of each against each other, and then at the bottom, you can see, I think, very clearly why David was not an underdog. We've got David. He's light, right? He's a little guy. He doesn't have that coat of armor. And then we've got Goliath, who's incredibly heavy. He's giant. He's got the coat of mail, all right? Then we got David, who, because he's not wearing that coat of mail, he's flexible, he's nimble, he's easily moved, right? And then there's Goliath, slow, needs his own shield bearer, right? Then you keep going. David, who has superior technology, versus Goliath, who has inferior technology. right? David can hit people at a great distance with that stone. Goliath can only hit someone that's right in front of him that he can reach. This would be like us going up against someone with a drone and all we have is a gun, okay? They have superior technology, we have inferior technology, so it becomes pretty clear who's going to win this one. David's a projectile warrior. He's not just an errand boy. He's not just a shepherd. He's actually this is a recognized division of armies. Back in the time, they actually had divisions or groups within the military, and these groups were projectile warriors. They're the ones who would send these stones out at a great distance to take the first shot at the enemy. And then you've got the infantry, right? Incredible, important task, but they can only battle what's right in front of them. And last but not least, David has this. He has confidence in the Lord. Whereas Goliath, he just has confidence in himself. And if you look at this list, you start to see why David's not an underdog at all. It should be very clear from the start who's going to win this one. I love, Robert Dowerman put it this way about this story. Goliath had as much chance against David as any Bronze Age warrior with a sword would have had against an opponent armed with a .45 automatic pistol. David had this one in the bag, literally. And this should be something that should hopefully encourage you guys to face down your Goliath every single day. And as we take communion, I want us to think about it in this way. Communion under God. We literally stand under God who wins battles in a very unusual, surprising way. And if you think about how God took Satan on himself, he did it by losing. He did it by giving. He said, you know I'm going to take you down? I'm going to give you my son. That's how God wins. And that's what we celebrate when we take communion. Let's do that now. Father God, we thank you so much for this story, this reminder of the peculiar way that you win battles. You choose people that at first blush might seem incapable, but in fact are incredibly capable. And I pray that that will encourage anyone in here who's facing down a Goliath, whether that Goliath is a person, a situation, a relationship, a challenge. God, may they see themselves as sitting right under you. You're on their side. You are their armor. You will be with them, and you will win in your peculiar way through them. And God, I pray as we take communion, we'll remember how you win. You often call us to gain by losing, by giving. And you did that through what you did through your Son on that cross. And so right now, as we take this bread, we remember the body of your Son, broken for us. As we take this juice, remember the blood of your Son poured out for us, given for us, so that you would win us forever. We thank you, we love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.